Newsline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
How you would think that it was like a skinwalker versus some type of animal, because there's a lot of people out there, especially on Reddit, right? I saw the comments. They were like, well, it's a fox or it's whatever. But you saw something.
Exactly. It was pretty weird. So seasonally, I did a lot of research on like skinwalkers when I started like kind of thinking that it might be one, and it was like in the typical time where like a skinwalker would start showing up. So like when it starts to get colder outside, and so probably like late fall, early winter, because it was like the fall school semester when I was interning up there.
Okay.
And I think that the big things that really like pointed to it, like there's just a lot of weird paranormal activity that happened up there, as well as just like it looked like a person, but it couldn't have been anybody from our camp, and it was a private property. Like there were some weird noises that we thought it was our boss messing with us. He was just making like,
Okay, but you say that you think it couldn't have been anybody from your camp. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So the way that we had it was a very small camp. There were probably less than 100 people up there at any given point. And the like main campus was all closed off to the public. So if anyone were to get up there, they'd have to, like, it'd be uncharted territory. There'd be no trails that could lead onto our campus. Occasionally on the very, very border, there'd be like hunters up there, but that was mostly from the ranch, and we like knew who those people were.
Okay, so it's all private property up there anyway. So there's nobody who's going across who's not known. And then as far as everybody who was there with the camp, what time did this happen?
So when we saw what we thought could have been a skinwalker, it was probably around dusk.
Oh, okay. So that's really early.
Yeah. It was probably around 7 at night. Like the sun had just gone behind the mountain.
Okay. But all the campers were somewhere else, right? And
yeah, they were in the buildings at that point.
So they were all in the buildings. What were they doing in the buildings at that point?
So it was sixth graders at the camps.
Okay.
So they were just kind of doing activities with their teachers while we got the stuff set up for the stargazing activity.
Okay. So you were tasked to set up something for stargazing. This is a typical thing for the camp to do. How often do you stargaze with the camp?
So there was a new school that would come up every week, and we would do it once a week.
You just do it once a week. So you have a typical place to set up for it. Did this incident happen near that place?
Yeah, so the camp had just a lot of like dirt access roads running through it. And there was one that kind of just shot off into a field right next to the ranch. And we all parked our cars out in this kind of sand lot.
Okay.
And then we saw somebody running between our cars. And that's like, we were like, it couldn't have been anybody, because our boss's house was nearby, but he was inside his house at the time. And like nobody from the ranch could have gotten over that way. Okay.
So this is pretty significant. So you drove your cars to this location.
And
then you parked the cars systematically next to each other. And then the stargazing spot, is that then away from the parking area where you had the cars?
Yeah, I would say the parking area is probably about 40 or 50 feet down the road from where we would take the kids for stargazing.
Okay. And how many people were with you at this time?
It was just me and two of my coworkers at that point.
Okay. But you took separate vehicles, or you had separate vehicles there?
So
or was this all part of the camp?
So we had our cars parked down there, but we left them parked there for the whole week. And then to drive around campus, we would just use like a utility vehicle.
I see. Okay. So this was pretty much next to the staff parking of the camp.
Yes.
If I'm understanding that correctly. Okay. So when this happened, there's 3 of you out there. So I'm assuming did you walk or take a UTV out?
So we took one of the trucks that belonged to the site, and we went and parked out there. And when we like saw the figure, we were just sitting in the bed of the truck, like waiting for it to get dark enough.
Okay. So you pretty much had everything ready to go. You were just waiting for that darkness to kind of set in to where you could really kind of start the activity of stargazing. Yeah. Okay. And so the three of you are in the bed of the truck. Describe to us what you saw from that point and what you heard as well, because that's also a big thing, part of your story as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So because this was like a weekly occurrence, there were actually two separate instances. We would hear weird noises all the time, but the first time I really noticed it was when we were sitting out there waiting for it to get dark enough so we could call the kids down to the building where we taught the lesson. And we just heard like this weird kind of, it sounded like somebody like making a funny cat noise or something. And we thought it was a person. We thought it was our boss messing with us because his like house that he stayed in on campus was right down the road from where we were. So we were like, okay, like come out, like quit messing with us. And it just kept going. And we just started like acknowledging its presence sort of, and it persisted more.
Okay. Now when you say a funny cat noise, was it like meowing? Or was
but it was like a hurt cat almost.
Okay. Okay. Which I know that some people have commented that foxes do sound like that, essentially.
Yeah.
But the way you're describing it is that it's not necessarily like an animal noise, but it was somebody mimicking an animal noise.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the Reddit comments and I was like, well, of course, like I've seen foxes all the time growing up in Colorado. Right. We never really saw foxes on our campus. And I think that the reason for that was because we had a lot of bobcats up there. And I just think that like the bobcats probably would have attacked like all the smaller things like raccoons and foxes on the main campus. But it didn't sound like an animal. I've heard foxes before and it was more like human. It sounded like a person like making a funny noise. So
when you talk about this camp, and I think it's safe to say that we can say that it is in the foothills of Colorado. It's mountainous terrain, right? Is it something that foxes would typically live up in that area? Because for me, foxes have always been more of something that's more down in the suburbs, something that's in kind of the open prairie lands that we have right at the foothills, but not anything at a higher altitude. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that there are definitely a lot of larger animals in the area that we were in that would not have really allowed foxes to have a chance up there. We had a lot of mountain lion and bear sightings up there. Okay. And I think that where we always saw the foxes was like on our way home down the kind of mountain roads. We would see them more in like the forested areas where there's lots of little like ground animals running around. So there were lots of like watch for fox signs. Was this camp at a higher elevation or was it at a lower elevation? It was pretty high up. It was, I believe, like the highest point of our camp was 10,000 feet, and the main campus was like 8,000. That's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, I guess explain a little bit about. You heard that sound, but that sound didn't happen that night, correct? The sound happened leading up to it the week prior. Yes. So the next week we were out there. We were already kind of suspicious. And at that point, I had actually completed a semester up there before. Lots of weird stuff had happened then. I'd already heard lots of weird stuff. And like, it just began to get really real the next semester I was up there. And then the next week when we were sitting up there, we thought somebody was like breaking into our cars or something. Really? Because we kept seeing this guy like just running around. It looked like there was a guy running around between our cars. And I just like was shining my flashlight over there. We were calling out and like no response. Somebody just kept running back and forth. So we kept seeing like something. Yeah. When you say that it looked like a guy running, did it look like a person who had clothes on? Did it look like somebody who was more like animal-like on their hind legs? How tall was it?
very, very tall and
Okay.
skinny.
Okay.
And it was probably like 6 or 7 feet tall, it looked
wow.
like.
Wow.
Yeah, very skinny. It didn't necessarily look like it was walking on its hind legs or anything, because it was kind of crouched, but it would come all the way up at some points.
So was it watching you?
I don't know.
Know that you were there?
I did think it knew that we were there, because the way we had noticed it originally was that we looked over and saw something like shining, and then we would see it like go away. Like either someone was running in front of a light and like it would go off when they went in front of it, or something on the figure was like shining. And then we like noticed the figure moving after that. We were like, wait, there's something like moving over there.
Now, did you have flashlights and everything set up?
Yeah, we did have flashlights. We were shining them over there, but every time we would shine the flashlight, it looked like we would see something like go right behind the car.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, you thought it was your boss playing a trick on you.
Yeah.
Is your boss like a trickster? Does he do that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we would do that kind of stuff all the time. Like I know like one semester a kid like tied a chair to the roof of his house or something like that.
Oh,
like,
really?
They'd put like taxidermied animals in our cabins and stuff.
So a lot of pranks happened. It's camp.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm sure that, now, is this camp, is it something that's open year round? I mean, in the fall, that's, I've heard, especially in Colorado, we do have winter camps. You know, we do have that kind of thing. And then, you know, spring and summer. So does that make sense for this camp? Is that something that would continue throughout the year?
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people would go to this camp throughout the year. They'd prank each other. It was a very welcoming, family-oriented environment, I'm assuming. So what makes you think then, if you've already been pranked by your boss, you've already had this happen, there's been people who've done that, what makes you feel that this was something different and unique?
Yeah. So when we started kind of like researching skinwalkers or like entities that could have been up at the camp with us, like there was always the prank that like, or the joke that like Bigfoot was up there with us. That was like our camp logo and everything.
Really?
But I was like, yeah. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think it's Bigfoot. Like, and then somebody started saying, well, what if it's a skinwalker? And I started looking into it, and a lot of things started kind of like lining up. There were a lot of like weird dead animal smells that we would just like experience all around camp, which was super abnormal. We had like kind of a faulty septic system, but there was like a very big difference between the smells near the buildings and then just like random smells like out in a field or whatever. And then the second thing that really kind of made me wonder if it had a tie to like some sort of like native entity or like a skinwalker was that we had tracked the history very closely of this camp, and we educated our students on it and stuff like that. But there was actually a native tribe that was murdered there a very long time ago. Yeah, during the Homestead Act, there was a man that moved there and settled, and they believe that he had a lot of tension with the natives that were already living there once he started to kind of colonize that land and build up a farm on that land.
Interesting. Do you think, or do you know, is there any kind of Native American burial grounds up there?
I wouldn't doubt it at all. I'm not sure, like, for sure if that is something that's up there, but I do know that, like, there were a lot of natives killed there, so it wouldn't surprise me. So
I think it's safe to say that even though you have done pranking before, it's a family-oriented camp, it's fun, it's interactive, it's safe to say that you've experienced that before. You know what your coworkers and your boss are capable of doing, how far they'll go, to the extent of it. So you can kind of say that that's not what that was. And then you can also, I mean, who else is 7 foot tall, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be the smell. The smell. Now, you did mention that there was a problem with the septic system. However, you guys are used to that smell. So any other new smell would kind of bring like a pause to you, like, oh, wait, something's different here. And I think we have to think rationally about that, because if you are accustomed to certain things, it's when something is out of the ordinary that makes you question what's happening. So this to you was something that, even though a lot of people might give an excuse on it, or like their reasoning behind what they think it is, to you, you know that you experienced something pretty unique. And did it scare you at the time?
I guess I was just more curious about it at first. But I guess that wasn't the thing that necessarily would like scare me at the camp. A lot of other stuff would happen that kind of, again, like added to, wow, there's something different going on here. People would like in the boys' cabins, the teachers would come to me the next morning and be like, kids were sitting up in their bed last night, like saying that there was something in our room.
What?
Or like there were people standing in the corner. And then one of my coworkers, from like the previous, like one of the previous seasons, she had told me that she was like subbing in one of the cabins, and she kept seeing like 4 girls in the middle of the night like sit up in a rotation and then like lay back down.
Really? Now, when they sat up, she was saying that they would just sit up almost like, I don't know, I don't want to say sleepwalking, but it's like they were still asleep, though. They weren't doing this as any kind of prank or anything like that. They were all sleeping.
Yeah, she said it was very much like they were talking in their sleep. Like they would sit up, or like they would sit up and like mumble something, or like sit up and look around with their eyes closed and then like laid back down.
And then the other thing was, in the boys' cabin, you said they saw something in the corner?
Yeah, I remember specifically one of my coworkers came to like our little circle meeting the next morning and was like, yeah, these boys in my cabin kept waking up last night and staring into the corner and telling me that, like asking me why there was like a little girl in here with us. Really? And lots of little kids would just sit up and say that like something was standing in the corner, or like just a bunch of weird stuff like that.
That's really interesting. So
yeah, we also had in one of the teacher cabins, so that was the historical landmark that they could actually stay in.
Okay.
Somebody passed away of pneumonia in one of the bedrooms, and a lot of teachers would report getting sick after staying in that bedroom as well.
Really? Sick with like respiratory, something like pneumonia, or just sick in general? Yeah, just sick like with respiratory issues. Really? That's really interesting. Now, the historical factor to all of this is that it was somebody's private like homestead, correct? Since 1800s? How old is this area? Yeah, it was settled at first in the early 1800s, and then another family actually bought the property from that man, and they turned it into their summer home. But something that's really cool is that they actually kept the original homestead cabin. They deconstructed it and then turned it into like an art studio for the wife that had lived there. And that was, I believe they bought the property in the late 1800s, and they finished the construction of the like bigger summer home there in the early 1900s. Really? Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. This is really, it's intriguing to me, especially somebody like yourself who's close to home, because I'm in Colorado, and I know that, we've had so many incidents that happen, especially in like right in the foothills. I know it seems odd to say, but you don't have to go far to have weird things happen. Not at all. Yeah. As a matter of fact, there have been Bigfoot migration patterns that they've calculated in Colorado that kind of go up from the springs all the way up north, right along that Front Range area. And it's not too far in. I want to say maybe you go right on the foothills, right near the suburbs. If you were to go back in maybe 30 to 60 miles. You don't have to go far. And it's that width, and it just goes straight up through Colorado. It's really interesting, the sightings. But what people don't realize is Colorado really was Native American territory. I mean, Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, is Native American for color red, if I'm right. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I know Denver means plateau. I mean, these are the things that you kind of learn as you're born and raised and you grow up in Colorado.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a really rich history here, and I think that a lot of people just don't realize how like far back it goes and how many people have passed through this state. Just the original settling of like the natives here, and then we had people coming through for gold and gem mining, and we had like now we're like booming with industry, and even more people are moving here. And I think that it's important to recognize like the culture of our state and how many natives we still do have living here. And like all of this stuff is very like real to them, and in their communities it's like a threat. And so I think it's like important to know like the culture of where you're living and like what you're dealing with almost.
Absolutely. Now, when did this happen, this incident?
So, like, are you talking about, like, the time of year?
The time of day? Year-wise. Was it last year?
Yeah, so it happened, late last fall.
Okay, so are you planning on going back this fall?
No. So you can complete 2 semesters there, and then they, like, want other interns to become part of the community.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. That's kind of a bummer. I was going to see if you were going to go back up, if you could give some, reports later, but that's okay. Well, that's really interesting. I think that you experienced something really unique, and I know a lot of people will probably comment on this as to what they think it is. A lot of people logically are going to say it was some type of animal. Obviously, what you heard, the sound part. I've heard foxes, and, to me, and of course I wasn't there to hear what you heard, but if you've heard foxes as well too, I mean, that's just kind of part of living in this area. So if you've heard foxes and you kind of know what that sounds like, then you know that what you experienced, if you have that feeling it was something different, then I believe you. I think that is something that is really interesting and people have to take into consideration. The other thing is, the smells. You're adjusted to the smells up there when you're at the camp. So having a different smell, which is even worse, more foul, a dead animal smell, it's pretty unique. And that's also a trait of these sightings. Now, someone did mention, the other thing too, someone mentioned something about, let me see, because I did want to ask you about this. Something about granite being... I remember this comment, yeah. So, is there granite up there?
Yeah, so that is that comment, when I received it, I had actually, like, never really heard of, like, anything like that. Granite, like, being a kind of a spawn point or something for, like, interdimensional activity.
Right.
That was very new to me, and I didn't realize that could have been a factor. There was a lot of granite up there. We did have like geology lessons that we would run through with the kids, and they learned about the pink feldspar and granite that formed up there. That was probably the most common rock on our mountain. So
now let me ask you, and I mean, Colorado has a lot of granite. That's kind of part of, our mountains and everything. But there's different locations as to where everything's at. Over at Wendigo Ridge, okay, there is the trails that run through there never become muddy because there's so much granite in the actual, just the soil, that when the water hits, it just kind of seeps in, and there's nothing that is like clay like. And so it's really easy to kind of walk back there, even in torrential rains. It's not really easy to do a 4-wheel drive, but we still do it. Is that something similar to the camp? I mean, did the camp kind of have it to where, there were patches that just could never become muddy? because they were just full of granite.
Yeah, I would say that's how most of the roads were. They didn't really get muddy. There were points at the bottom of hills that would gather some like little pools, but never really got muddy up there.
Yeah. That's really interesting to know the combination between the two. And the only reason why I say that is because, a Wendigo is something that is similar to Skinwalker, but different, and then we have Skinwalkers who, that whole Skinwalker Ranch and all of that story and everything is so close to Colorado. It's really, really close. But yet we also have Wendigos which come down from the north. So all that folklore tends to kind of hover in this area as well too. Like we can be reciprocating factors of that. Same with Bigfoot.
Yeah.
There's Bigfoot sightings all along, west and east coast. But Colorado still has the opportunity to have that folklore be part of it because of our Rocky Mountains, because of our, just our natural forest and we have so many national forests that it's ridiculous. We have so many acres of it. Colorado is just huge on that. And so a lot of people don't really go up. That's the one thing that I never understood about people who move here from other states is that they always say, oh, well, do you go to the mountains? No, people don't. The majority of people in Denver don't go to the mountains. It's crazy. But the mountains are really still untapped and unexplored. There's a lot of area back there and if you hear the people who are up there all the time, they have so many sightings. So many sightings.
Oh, yeah. Lots of people who live up there will, that is, kind of exactly what I was saying. That is real to them. There are reservations here where, the cops won't even, touch paranormal activity because it is, it's very real to them, and that is part of their culture that is dangerous to, their livelihood and their community. And I don't know. I just have a hard time, believing that wouldn't be true if that is, so real, of a threat to them.
Now, I do want to ask you one more thing. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and everything, because this is really, really important for us to kind of have more information. And it helps people to understand, where certain sightings happen and how we can kind of justify your case, put it in with all the other cases, and then you kind of add it to that pile, if that makes sense, because the more information that we all have, the better. But the other question I have for you is, you mentioned that you would go out there and do stargazing. Have you guys seen anything unexplained when you would do the stargazing?
Yeah, I actually do have a couple things that I can think of. So we would, depending on the time of the year, you can see different planets and constellations. So we have these big green laser pointers that we would point up into the sky and circle around different stars and planets that we wanted the kids to look at. And one time when we were out there doing that activity, there was a light shining back at us up on the mountain where there wasn't any property. It was just forested. And it would just be there sometimes. Originally we thought it was one of the interns on the other side of the mountain pointing their laser at it or something, but they weren't doing that activity at that time. We kind of tried to communicate and line it up to see if it was that. And I don't know. It was just super weird.
What kind of light was it? Was it a colored light? Was it white light?
Yeah, we would see a little yellow light sometimes just kind of on the mountain. And we would see some stuff that we were unable to identify in the sky. Lots of actually meteorite activity, but I don't know. They all looked very different, so I wouldn't be surprised if there were UFO activity. We were far out enough that it totally could have been that.
Yeah, we had an incident happen to us 3 weeks ago when we went up to the ridge, and it's so hard because now we have this monsoon season that Colorado is getting all of this cloud cover, all of this rain. So it's been so hard for us to go back up to the ridge. But when we were up there last, there was, and I was so frustrated because we didn't catch it on camera, but we were setting up our sites. We had hiked up to this area where you could see pretty much everything. You could see the valley in between all of the mountains. You could see the ridges on one side, but we were up on another ridge. And as we were setting up, somebody's just like, what is that white light? Now, we have a GPS system that tells us of airplanes. And that is something that is really important. So it'll tell us if it's an airplane, a helicopter, and it's a GPS level system. It's just the same thing that pilots use. We just use it when we go out because we want to know, we don't want to shine a laser at an airplane. So we were looking and there were no airplanes, no helicopters, and it was a yellow light. It was yellow white, okay? And what it did was it would kind of jump on the ridge. So it was bright and it was kind of shining around, but I don't know how else to explain it. It just kind of jumped from each different point in the ridge and it would stop.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say that the one that we saw was jumping, but it definitely would like move a little bit sometimes. It looked like, but it was weird because it couldn't have been like a person. It was kind of out there consistently, like weekly out in the middle of nowhere. Like,
well, for us, when we look at across from ridge to ridge, I mean, it has to be 10 miles or more. It has to be because it's a very deep ridge and we're on the east side and we're looking west, and that westerly ridge is so much farther out that that light was so bright. It looked like an aircraft light. And as it was moving, there's no way a person was moving, like jumping. I mean, they weren't jumping, 500 feet to the left in a split second kind of a thing. But this thing looked like it was kind of jumping and like making all sorts of weird movements, and then it just was gone. And
I mean, I don't know. That kind of almost makes me wonder about that comment about the interdimensional beings or whatever, which is something I would definitely have to do more research into. But we did kind of have like a legend of some sort of being that could kind of defy like the rules of our dimension at our camp. He was our own little like cryptid almost, and we called him the Wanderer. And
really?
It was a guy that, like, by legend was actually killed up there by accident in a piece of farming, like, rototilling kind of equipment.
Oh, really?
And they think it was foul play, but I've heard a lot of people say they would see, like, a little girl and a very tall man with red hair both around the same building. And so we kind of believe that it showed up in, like, different forms. And that it kind of just was everywhere and nowhere all at once. Like, we'd just see it in random places.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's intriguing, especially, you mentioning that the kids saw a little girl in their cabin and, a tall man, and what you saw was also really tall. But that's interesting. That's really intriguing. And I know that, everybody has their paranormal stories, on different locations. Camps always have their different stories to tell. But I think what you saw was something very unique, and it was an actual, I just don't know what to call it. I just don't know if we call it an entity, a creature, a cryptid, because cryptids are supposed to be more of a disfigured animal, something that we haven't found yet. It's not necessarily like a witch or anything like that, but at the same time, a skinwalker, even though it is a witch, and that's the folklore, right, of the Native American tribes, whatever this entity is seems to fall in a different category altogether, because we're talking about dimensions. We're talking sometimes about spiritual entities or ghosts. Sometimes Bigfoot is always involved. UFOs, lights, orbs, all that stuff is involved in this type of activity. And so that's why I think that there's something else to it, if that makes sense. There's just something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that it could either be multiple things up there or just like that it's a hot spot kind of for just activity that is like unable to like interact with the human world that we like in the way that we do. Like something is up there that is like able to move through our world in a different way than we can, and it's just operating like alongside us. And I think that like the kids could feel that. I believe that like kids and animals feel lots of different like energies, and I don't know, it was just super weird energy at that place.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that you take that stance with it, and I appreciate you doing that because, you know, a lot of times, you know, people don't always, even if they see something, they have a hard time really going that extra step, you know, in saying that. So I do appreciate you saying that. But so how has this changed you?
Well, I would call myself a pretty skeptical person, and this like I'd had like a couple encounters that I guess I had thought were paranormal before, but never something this like persistent or out of the normal. And so I would say it definitely opened my mind to a lot of things. I don't doubt things as quickly now, I would say. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. But it's also good to still ask the questions and try to make sure. But it's good also to have that open mind to, you know, that understanding because you've witnessed it, you've experienced it. And so you know what somebody else is going through when they've seen something as well. Well, Mia, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on and, you know, sharing your story. This was really fun. And I really, really do think that a lot of people will have some good follow-up questions. Especially there are some people, have you checked out some of the Facebook groups for Colorado that talk about skinwalkers and Bigfoot?
Yeah, so my boyfriend actually, he's not sure what tribe he's a part of, but he has some native like lineage, and he's very into all of that stuff. And he's part of a few of those Facebook groups, and he used to work up at the camp with me, and he has lots of stories of stuff that would happen up there as well.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to talk to him then. Okay.
Yeah, if we actually are still really close with our boss up there, so we were planning on like eventually going to have like dinner up there or something. So I would love to go back up to the camp.
So speaking of your boss, just real quick, what did he ever say? Did you ever confront him on that, and did he deny or?
Yeah, I asked him, and I said that we thought he was messing with us, and he said, "You know that I'm in bed by that time watching Breaking Bad."
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, and so we knew it wasn't him. He was a really early to bed guy, like was in his cabin by like 7, lights out, like.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And he was a really short guy, so I don't think it could have been him.
Oh yeah, what is he like 5? What do you think he is?
Probably like 5'6".
Really? Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna say that that's short, but that's, you know, I can understand where like 7 foot to 5'6". That's a pretty significant height difference. So
I would agree.
Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate it, and let me know if there's any other things that happen to come up. You know, after we've talked, definitely let me know about your boyfriend, because I really want to know if he would ever want to come on and share some stories with us, because that would be really, really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time and coming on the show.
Okay. Thank you guys for having me.
I want to thank you for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. You know, we talk about a lot of crazy stuff here, so if you want to hear more, just like and subscribe to the channel. It'd really help us out a lot. And plus, if you have a crazy story, whether it be an alien abduction, near-death experience, or something of the paranormal, or a glitch in the matrix, please let us know. Share it in the comments. We'd love to have you on the show.